So earlier we talked about some of the different formats that you can use when saving images for the web or really for on-screen delivery. Well, how do you go about optimizing artwork for those formats? Well, typically what you do, especially if you're working with single files like this, is you'll use the Save for Web dialog box. Now you can open that dialog box by coming up to the File menu, and from the File menu you can choose Save for Web. This will open up a fairly large dialog box, and there's quite a bit here. So what I'd like to do in this video is deconstruct this dialog box so you have a good sense as to what everything is. Then we'll go into the finer details of optimizing images for different file formats. So let's take a look at the top here. We have 4 tabs. The first tab is going to show you the image in its original state. Furthermore, down here towards the bottom, you'll have some information about the file size of that image. The next tab is the Optimize tab. This will give you a preview of what the image will look like when it's optimized based upon the settings that you have configured over here on the right-hand side. You'll notice down here towards the bottom, again, we get information about this image. This optimized version of the image is much smaller in terms of file size. It's also giving you a readout in terms of how long it will take to download based upon this internet connection speed. Now, this internet connection speed is a little antiquated. It's pretty old. So 34 seconds really isn't all that realistic in terms of how long this will really take to download on the internet. You can change those settings by accessing this menu. You could come over and choose something a little bit faster. Something like a cable or a DSL connection would be a little bit more accurate. And again, you want to work to the lowest common denominator in terms of what you think your visitors to your website would have for an internet connection speed. Additionally, over here on the far right, you get some details about the optimization settings that you have configured over here on the right. So that's what the Optimize tab represents. Now, there's also a 2-up tab that lets you explore, in this case, the original image and the optimized version. So you can compare them side by side, and you'll notice that the optimized version looks pretty much just as good as the original version. Then there's a 4-up tab, which will show you the original image compared to what would be 3 different settings in terms of optimization. So you can compare the 3 different settings against the original. I'll just come back to the Optimize tab for now. On the left-hand side, we have some tools. The first tool is the Hand tool. What that gives you the ability to do is click and drag the image around within this viewer. Then you'll notice that we have the Slice Select tool. We're not working with slices right now, but if this image was sliced up, we'd have the ability to select different slices within the document. If you're not exactly sure in terms of what a slice is, don't worry, we'll talk about it a little bit later on. You also have the ability to access a zoom tool. You can zoom into the image, or if you hold down the Alt key or Option on the Mac, you can zoom out. There's an eyedropper tool giving you the ability to sample color, and this becomes important when trying to create transparency for the GIF file format. And just below there, you'll see that there's a button that gives you the ability to toggle the visibility of slices. Again, we're not really working with slices, so we'll see a marker for the first slice, which is the entire image, but if we want to turn it off, we can do that by clicking the same button. So finally, that brings us down here towards the bottom. Down towards the bottom, as you hover over the image with the eyedropper tool, you're getting some readouts in terms of the color. You're getting RGB values, hex values, and also alpha and index values, all down here in this area. You also have zoom levels here, and you can control that. You also have the ability to preview this optimized version of the image in a web browser. You can also come over here and save it, cancel it, and you can also click Done. If you click Done, you're essentially establishing what the settings will be when you ultimately export out the image. So up here towards the top, we have the ability to choose from several different presets. You also have the ability, of course, to customize these presets by choosing different options in this section. Now, we'll talk about these options in greater detail when we talk about exporting the images. One of the things that you want to make sure that you have selected is the Convert to sRGB checkbox. Now, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the course when we were talking about how you could manage color on the web. sRGB is supported by the W3C, so you'll get the best results there. In terms of preview, you want to make sure that you choose Internet Standard RGB, and in parentheses it reads No Color Management. This will give you the best chance of reproducing colors in a consistent fashion across a wide range of operating systems, devices, and screens. With that being said, there will always be variations because different manufacturers have different parameters when they set up their monitors, and different software manufacturers have different parameters. For example, everything on the Mac will appear a little bit brighter than it will on the Windows side. There's just nothing you can do about that. Here, because we're working with the GIF file type, we have a color table. If we were working with something like JPEG, we would not have a color table. You also have some information about the image size, which you can change. Typically, I don't like to resize images in this dialog box. I like to do it in Photoshop, but the ability is here. You can also change the image size based upon a percentage. If you're going to be changing the image size, you can choose a resampling algorithm here in this quality drop-down menu. And if you're working with an animation, you'll have some animation options down here towards the bottom. So that's the Save for Web dialog box. We're going to be using this dialog box to optimize images throughout this chapter.